Shalom, shalom, Israel's brothers. Abba Allah coming back at you with another cold cut. I'd like to give our praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. I'd like to give double honors to the men out there on the highways and byways pushing this truth and honesty and sincerity. The mighty Akwath, raising up their children and their households, being submissive unto their husbands, and the mighty children abiding in their parents' households. Shalom, shalom. It's going to be a quick cold cut on Galatians, the third chapter, Galatians 3 and 28 cuts, man. Right? So if you ever see a Christian or somebody else trying to come up, with doctrines, always trying to use Galatians 3 and 28 to prove that all nations can be saved. Hey, guess what, man? Right? There's some cuts that you can use, right, to prove, right, that Israelites or that Paul was speaking to only about Israel, man, right? And that he's not talking about everybody. All right, so this is going right back into the milk, man. Quick cuts for Galatians 3 and 28. Let's go to Galatians 3 and 1. Because you have to understand what the book of Galatians, the history, the context of what it's actually talking about. Right? You have to understand the history behind it. Why was Paul sent to the church of Galatia? Right? It's Galatians 3 and 1. O foolish Galatians, who have bewitched you that you should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Yahushua Mashiach had been evidently set forth, crucified among you. Right? That this only would have learned of you, received you by the Spirit, by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith. Because the church of Galatia thought they were justified by the law. Right? That was a stumbling block unto them. Right, that they must be justified by the law, that they may do the works of the law to be saved. But it was by faith, so Paul had to come and kind of tell them that thing. Right? All right, so we jump down to verse 28, and it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, and there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you're all one of Yahushua Mashiach. And guess what, man? Right, you have a lot of people that say, let's talk about all nations. We're all one of Yahushua. Jesus Christ. We're all, the same. There's neither Jew, right, the Israelites, neither Greek, so-called white man. All right. But we're going to get some cuts for that. All right, so let's jump up to verse 16. Galatians 3 and 16. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not as to seeds as of many, but as one. Right, so it's not as seeds as of many, because a lot of nations came out of Abraham. But it's only one seed that come out of Abraham that is receiving the promise. That's why it says, but as of one. And we're going to read about that seed line. And to thy seed, which is Yahushua HaMashiach. Let's jump down to verse 29. All right, so now that we know it's one seed, right, that has to come out of Abraham is going to receive the promises, right? Verse 29, and if you be Hamashiachs, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Well, hold on. Who are heirs according to the promise? All right, who's receiving that inheritance with Yahushua Mashiach? All right, so these questions got to be answered. So we're going to hop into it. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. 12 and 1. These questions got to be answered, man. This is the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and 1. And it says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles carried away with these dumb idols, even as you were led. So a Christian or somebody that's trying to come up against you, right, will say, well, hold on. Gentiles means other nations, right? Gentiles always talks about the other nations. Well, no, Gentiles usually means the other nations, but the word Gentile also going to be applied to Israelites that was living as the other nations, right? Or as the heathens, right? When you go to the Bible Compact Dictionary, page 195, right? Speaking on Gentiles, it's going to say usually other nations, right? Because you can have Israelites that do the works of the other nations become conformed to those nations. So that's why Paul said you were Gentiles. How can I be was Chinese? How could I used to be Asian? Now I'm an Israelite, right? If that's talking about the other nations. No, these are talking to Israel. Paul is speaking to Israelites because they were Gentiles. Now they're coming back, man, because they were led away with dumb idols. What nation of people serve different gods, right? Who is that talking about? All right, so up and down, if you read in the book of Corinth, right, if you understand the church of Corinth, Paul was talking to Israelites, right, all throughout the book of Corinth, right? So let's go to 1 Corinthians 10 and 1. We're going to prove that even more, right? It's 1 Corinthians 10 and 1. Moreover, brethren, right? So Paul calls these people brothers, man. Who is Paul's brothers? Who are Paul's brothers according to the flesh? Right, let's go to Romans 9 and 1. Let's hold that. All right, quick cuts, man. Let's hold that. This is Romans chapter 9. Romans 9 and 1. I say then, Hamashiach, I lie not, my conscience also bearing me witness in the Holy Spirit, that I have great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart. For I could wish that myself were accursed for Hamashiach, for my brethren, right? So who are Paul's brethren? We're going to read on. my kinsmen according to the flesh. So who are Paul's brothers according to the flesh? Right? This is Romans 11:1. I say then, have God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. So Paul comes out of the seed of Abraham, but of the tribe of Benjamin. So his brothers according to the flesh are Israelites. And verse 4 is going to tell you, it's going to say who are Israelites. So when Paul is referring to brethren in 1 Corinthians 10:1, those brothers are his Israelites. All right. And it says 1 Corinthians 10:1, moreover, brethren, I would not have you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were passed under the cloud and all passed through the sea. Well, hold on. Paul said our fathers passed through the cloud. Not everybody's forefathers passed through the Red Sea in the cloud. So who is that talking about in the Old Testament? Right? Paul is referring to the church of Corinth. He said our fathers passed through the cloud. So everybody in the church of Corinth has a common forefather that experienced the Exodus, man. And we already know the Exodus was to the children of Israel. And it says, and all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Hamashiach. So Israel, Israel walked through the sea with Moses, right? But Paul is saying our fathers, and he's calling them brethren. That's signifying that the Gentiles is Israel, man. Paul came to the Israelites, right? He's not talking about everybody, right? Let's go to Rome. Let's finish that in Romans. All right. This is Romans 9. Right? This is Romans 9:4. Who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory, and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of God and the promises. So the adoption that these Christians love to talk about, the grafting in of the other nations or the reconciling, that only belongs to the Israelites. So how can the adoption, the even concept of the adoption, be for anybody else? All right, let's go to Ephesians. The whole concept of the adoption was obviously given to Israel. So how can that be for everybody? All right, this is Romans. Shocking. All right, there's one baptism. Right, there's only one. This is Ephesians 4:4. There is one body and one spirit, even as you are called in hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. Right, so there's one Lord, there's one faith, there's one baptism. Right, it's not multiple baptisms. One God and Father of all, who is above all, through you and you and all. Right, so let's go back to it. All right. And it says, and the adoption and the glory of the Most High, right? The chariots, all of that, man, the angels, that belong to Israel. And the covenants, the old covenant, the new covenant, the Christians say that we under, right? Who are the covenant circumcisions, right? That belongs to the Israelites. And the giving of the law. The laws were given to Israel, right? Right, that's plain. And the service of God, right? The ceremonial aspects, the priesthood, right? Who can perform the actual sacrifices and everything. That belongs to Israel, right? And what else it says? And the promises. Isn't the kingdom of heaven a promise? Right? In the heirs of. Wait, hold on. Didn't it say in Galatians, right? If your heirs according to the promise. So who is the promises for? It's for Israel. All right? This is Galatians. And it says Galatians 3:29, if you be Hamashiach, then you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. But we already know the promises made to Israel, so who are Israelites, right? Let's go to Acts chapter 2, right? Because you have our people dwelling in every nation, man, right? So that's why Paul had to make his journeys all around, right? He had to go to Rome, Spain, because you had our people literally dwelling in every nation. Right? Let's go to the book of Acts. Right, let's get to the point, though. This is the book of Acts chapter 2 and verse 5. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. So let's read about some of these nations that our people came from during this time. Verse 9, Parthians and Medes and Elamites. So you had East Indian Jews, man. You had brothers living in East India. And dwellers in Mesopotamia and in Judea, Cappadocia, and Pontus, and in Asia. You had Jews dwelling in Asia. Phrygia and Pamphylia and Egypt and in parts of Libya about Cyrene and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongues the works of God, right? So we understand that we have Jews in every nation. So Paul had to make his ministry everywhere. Let's go to Second Maccabees chapter 6, because there was a point in time where our people couldn't confess themselves to be Jews, so they had to call themselves Greeks. They had to call themselves the other nation, the works of the other nations, the nationality of the other nations, because it was unlawful for them to call themselves Jews, right? So that's why we had to conform to other nations, right? And call ourselves the ways of the nations. Like we call ourselves American, right? Hey, guess what? Our people will call themselves Greeks. This second Maccabees 6:4. I'll start at verse 6 and get to the point. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days, right? Or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So there's a certain point in time where a man couldn't even, it was unlawful for him to call himself a Jew. So obviously, what is a man going to call himself? To avoid death, he's going to call himself the ways of the other nations. So Paul's ministry was literally to the people, to our people that didn't know who they were, right? It's the second Ezra chapter 2 and 30. It's the second Ezra chapter 2 and verse 30. Here I come. I got you. Sure. Shalaki, let's get into it. All right. The second Ezra chapter 2 and verse 31. All right. Second Ezra 2 and verse 30. Be joyful, O thou mother, with thy children, for I will deliver thee, saith the Lord. Remember thy children that sleep, for I shall bring them out of the sides of the earth and show them mercy unto them, for I am merciful, saith the Lord Almighty. Embrace thy children till I come and show mercy unto them, for my wells run over and my grace shall not fail. Here's the point. I, Ezra, received the charge of the Lord upon Mount Horeb that I shall go into Israel. So the Lord is speaking about Israel, right, when it's concerning his mercies and his children, right? But look what Ezra calls Israel, right? But when I came unto them, they set me at naught and despised the commandment of the Lord. And that's what our people do, right? That's how we know it's talking about our people, because when we go out there on the highways and byways, they set us at naught and they despise the commandments of the Lord. Verse 34. And therefore I say unto you, O you heathen. So Israel is referred to as heathens, right? We were literally referred to as heathens, or different nations, man. That hear and understand, look for your shepherd, he shall give you everlasting rest, for he is nigh at hand, that shall come in the end of the world. So we literally refer to as heathens, man, because we literally committed the works and acts and the trespasses of the nations, right? Right? So you have to understand that. So Paul went to Gentiles, he went to heathens, but that was of our people, man, right? He didn't go to everybody, right? So these are cuts that you could use, right? For Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28 as well, man. Right? So this is a quick cold cut, just going into cuts of you can use for Galatians 3 and 28. Right? Lord, when you was edified, you took good notes. I would like to give our praise to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushua, bit mighty, very strong. Shalom.